Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the world's oldest and, frankly, most overlooked conflicts, the Naga Insurgency in northeast India. It's a 75-year-long struggle for identity and sovereignty, where a real, lasting peace has always seemed to be just over the horizon. And to really grasp the human cost here, just look at this number: 17,000. That's the estimated number of people, fighters, soldiers, and civilians, who have lost their lives since this all began. It's a truly staggering toll for a conflict that so many people have never even heard of.
So, to make sense of this long and complicated history, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. We'll start with how a nation was declared, move into the first war, see how the movement became divided, look at the cycle of peace accords, and finally, land on the unresolved peace we're seeing today.
Okay, let's get into it. Our story really kicks off right as the British Empire is ending, because the Naga quest for their own nation is completely tangled up with India's own journey to independence. You know, this entire decades-long fight really boils down to one single powerful word: sovereignty. For the Naga people, this was never just about having some local autonomy. It's about the fundamental right to exist as their own nation, governing themselves. The timing here is absolutely crucial. So, in 1946, the Naga National Council, or NNC, gets formed. Then, get this, on August 14, 1947, literally one single day before India officially became independent, the NNC declares Naga independence. What a bold statement, right? Right from the very beginning, they were drawing a line in the sand. And to prove they weren't just bluffing, they held their own referendum in 1951. The result they came back with was just mind-blowing. 99% of Nagas, they claimed, voted for their own independent state. But, and this is a huge but, the Indian government refused to recognize it. And that political stalemate was about to get very, very violent. So, you can probably guess what happens next. This wasn't going to stay a political debate for long. It was about to explode into decades of brutal guerrilla warfare fought deep in the jungles of northeast India. By 1956, the NNLSC had moved way beyond just talking. They set up their own parallel government and their own army. India's response? A full-blown military deployment. But this quickly became more than just a local fight. Soon, Pakistan and China started arming and training Naga fighters, basically turning this regional insurgency into another proxy battle in the Cold War. And the human cost of just this first phase of fighting was absolutely devastating. Between 1956 and the first real ceasefire in 1964, it's estimated that around 4,000 people were killed. That makes it one of the single deadliest periods in the entire conflict. Now here is where the story takes a major turn. And funny enough, it didn't come from a big battle, but from a peace deal. And the great irony here is that this attempt to create peace is what would actually shatter the Naga movement from within. This was the Shillong Accord of 1975. On paper, it was designed to end the war. But for many of the Naga nationalists who had been fighting for decades, being told to accept the Indian constitution and just give up their weapons, well, that felt a lot less like a peace treaty and a lot more like a complete and total surrender. The fallout from this was instant and explosive. The accord basically lit a fuse. A younger, more radical faction completely rejected it. They broke away and formed the NSCN to keep the fight going. But the division didn't even stop there. Before long, the NSCN itself fractured into rival groups that ended up fighting each other just as fiercely as they fought the Indian army. And this split, it wasn't just a one-time thing. It actually points to this really frustrating pattern in the whole peace process, something analysts have called a cycle of diminishing returns. It's a fascinating theory. The idea is that when you actually line up the peace deals over the decades, you can see why many Nagas felt like they were constantly being offered less and less, not more. It's like each new agreement just chipped away at their original aspirations. I mean, just look at the difference here. It is night and day, right? That very first agreement back in 1947 actually recognized the NNC's governing powers and even had a clause that seemed to leave the door open for independence down the road. Then you jump to 1975, and the Shillong Accord offers zero political power. It's almost entirely about surrender. So you have to wonder, what happened? Was this a deliberate strategy by the state, or did the Nagas' own infighting just weaken their hand at the bargaining table? And all that history brings us to where we are right now. For more than 20 years, a very fragile ceasefire has been in place. The guns are mostly silent, which is good, but a final political solution feels just as far away as ever. For a moment there, in 2015, it really looked like we had a historic breakthrough with a new framework agreement. There was so much optimism, but that faded pretty fast. The talks have completely stalled out, deadlocked over a few core issues that are packed with symbolism.
And really, it all comes down to this. This is the deadlock. What does sovereignty actually look like in practice? The NSCNIM is pushing for this idea of shared sovereignty, and for them, that has to include their own separate flag and their own constitution. But for the Indian government, those are absolute red lines, non-negotiable. And then there's the demand for Nagaland, a single Naga state carved out of other states, and that's just a complete non-starter for everyone else in the region.
So, in the end, the Naga insurgency leaves us with these really profound questions. Can you really share something like sovereignty? And after decades of conflict and internal division, how do you build a peace that actually lasts? After 75 years, the challenge isn't just stopping the fighting, it's finding a political answer that everyone can finally live with.